So, does anybody follow Lyric or pay attention to what Lyric's been doing? Yes, a few hands have gone up. Lyric has had an incredible 3 or 4 years. Has it been that long? And actually, 4 years ago, Lyric was sitting here at this event as a brand new emerging artist, just finished high school, was thinking about pursuing music as a career. Well, actually, you were committed to pursuing music as a career. And like all of you, came along to this event to really find some intel for what she should do, what steps she should take, where she should go, who she should meet, all the questions you've all come here with. And I was wondering, Lyric, when you first came to that first BANDCAMP event, what was kind of going through your head as an emerging artist, and what was the reality for you at that time? Can you think back to that time? Do you remember?
Yeah. I mean, I was really nervous. I was a very shy, like you said, I'd just come out of high school. So I was very shy. I really didn't know anyone in the industry pretty much at all. And so I just wanted to try and really get outside of my comfort zone and try and meet as many people as I could. So I would come to as many events like this one as I could, even though I was so scared and I often would just be very shy and not talk to anyone. But it was the right decision because it was a place where I met so many of the first industry connections I ever made, and you just sort of have to put yourself out there when you're starting out and when you're young in order to meet people, because I really wasn't meeting anyone on my own, just playing gigs at local restaurants and things like that. So coming to events like this is where I started to meet people. It was really useful.
So at that time, you were playing gigs in local restaurants, cover songs. You had a few original songs. I remember that you were preparing for release, but things are very different for you now, or they appear to be to me. You currently have 34,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, and of course there are other streaming platforms I didn't look at. Your songs have more than 2.5 million streams from what I could add up, again just on Spotify. I didn't look at YouTube and the others. You won the Gold Coast Music Prize, you won Breakout Artist of the Year at the Gold Coast Music Awards, you won the People's Choice Award twice, you've performed on Triple J's Like a Version, you've showcased at Big Sound twice and South by Southwest Sydney once, you've played Spilt Milk and heaps of other festivals, and you're only 22. And so that really is starting from the same point that all of you are now. None of that really happened by accident. I think sometimes emerging artists come to events like this and they're like, I just need that one big break. But that's not how these things work, right? So what took you from this room to these amazing milestones?
Yeah, I reckon the big one for me was just sort of putting myself out there. I think for a long time, I was really scared of putting my music even on the internet, or even like telling my friends that I was putting it on the internet and things like that. And I think once I overcame that barrier was a big jump for me. Once you really just have to be like putting yourself out there as much as you can, whether it's playing gigs, whether it's posting your songs online, whether it's releasing them even though you don't know how to release a song for the first time. I think that was the big thing that sort of changed it for me. And the more I just like was myself and realized to have fun with it, making things on social media, and actually started enjoying putting my music up online and posting it, that's when my audience sort of found me. So I think that was the biggest thing for me, was when I stopped sort of being nervous and shy about it, and actually just telling my friends and family, being like, yeah, I'm releasing music and I'm putting it out there, and not being scared of it and posting whatever I liked. And when you do that, when you are just like yourself and putting out your music and just being true to yourself, your audience will gravitate towards you. They really like that.
And that's an interesting point, because you heard what I said about Sunny Lou and her brand and how true she is to that brand, but also who she is as a person. And you made it sound like you released these songs and then your audience found you, but it actually didn't happen like that. You have put in, when it comes to grassroots marketing, you have put in the hard yards. I remember seeing you at Sundown Festival, and you know and this was a couple of years ago, and there was a crowd it's a free festival, it's not ticketed, run by council in the Southport Mall, what used to be the Southport Mall, And there was a crowd of people waiting to come in to get pole position, barrier position to see Lyric, even though there was no competition for the barrier, but still there was like this vibe of we are major fans, we've got to get in there. And afterwards you came out, you had the Lyric friendship bracelets, I've still got one, and interacted with people, and even though they weren't buying more merch, you gave them time, you made every single fan, I remember thinking this, feel like they were your number one fan. So how would you describe that kind of fan engagement process that led to all these super fans?
Yeah, I think that's like my favorite part of the whole job, and just the thing that I like try and focus on the most, and I think any artist should try and focus on the most, because you can have active listeners and you can have passive listeners and people who just sort of listen to music when it comes on in a playlist, when it comes on the radio, but it's those super fans are the ones who buy all the merch, buy all the tickets, tell all of their friends about your music, get all of their friends into it. So I really just sort of, my way of going about it is I just think back to, not even think back to, I mean I am a fan of so many artists, so many films, so many TV shows. I think of like how I feel about those things and how excited I would be if my favorite artist had an interaction with me and told me something important, and how that would be like such a massive thing for me, especially when I was younger. That would be like one of the biggest moments of my life, and so I always try and like keep that in mind whenever I'm meeting literally anyone who's come up to me after a show, anyone who reaches out online. I would always try and reply to messages and things like that where I could reply to comments, just try and like interact with these people as much as I can, because it just, I know how much it can mean for fans to have that interaction from something that they really care about, and they put a lot of time into it. They put a lot of time and their own money into buying your merch and coming to your shows. So I think that's like, yeah, one of the most important things for me. And I just think the biggest help is just like remembering how it feels to be a fangirl yourself, and going to those sorts of events, and how exciting it is, especially for like a lot of my audience is so young, and so they just like, sometimes it's their first ever concert, and so they just like, I really want to make that experience as special for them as I possibly can.
And you get down low, you get at their level, you like really make it as intimate as possible. How are you going to cope with that when you're in massive stadiums?
I know, it is, even like now it is weirder, like with shows getting bigger, and like the difference between my first ever shows and then playing at something like Spilt Milk, where the stage is so massive, and there's like from here to there, from away from the barricade, and where the first fans are, like there's a massive gap. But I don't know, I think there is just something about the type of music that I perform. A lot of my fans find it really relatable, and they're all like singing it as if they feel it and wrote it themselves. So I think that just the biggest thing for me is just like connecting with the fans on the barricade, no matter where the barricade is, whether they're right at my feet, which sometimes they are, or whether they're like 5 meters away. It's just looking at them, it's interacting with them, it's meeting them after the show, always making an effort to try and go out into the crowd and say hello to everyone after the show. And yeah, I hope that everyone who comes to my shows, whether it was the tiniest ones or the bigger ones, have all felt that same sort of connection.
Brad Hosking and I were just talking about something you posted on social media, I think it was on the weekend, from WA, where you were doing a merch signing, and there were a lot of people in that queue, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's so cool. I think that was really special. A lot of festivals don't really do that, but yeah, the festival I played on the weekend had like a signing tent dedicated to every single artist, had a half-an-hour slot, and all the fans could come up and meet them beforehand, and it was such a cool experience, because then when I got to play the show, all the people on the barricade I could like recognize, and I'd already met them and had a conversation with them earlier that day, and I think that was a really cool and awesome thing. I think a lot more festivals should be doing that. It was a really, really awesome way to like get to meet the fans, especially before even playing the set. And yeah, it was just so special. I mean, every time I go all the way over to Perth, it's just crazy that can be fans all the way. But you fly 5 hours and there's still people who care about the music. It's crazy.
When you were sitting in this room 4 years ago, would you have projected forward 4 years and saw yourself playing festivals like Spilt Milk, or this one in Perth, being flown to Perth with your band?
I don't even know. I mean, obviously it was like all I ever dreamed of and wanted, but you can't really picture it happening, and it's always just like you feel like it's so up to chance. You wonder whether anything is going to happen. So I don't think I ever expected it, but it was like always my absolute dream to be able to just like play shows with a band and to have fans like singing words back to me were like my two biggest things, because at that point I didn't have a band and I'd never played a headline show, and so those are like the two things that I really wanted, and to be able to get to do that now is just like, yeah, it's such a dream.
One of the things I find, in case anyone hasn't picked up, I'm quite woke. Some people might call me a radical lefty. And so one of the things I love hearing you talk about superfans is that in the music industry, you know, you have these big labels and record companies who would meet with an emerging artist or someone they just signed and be like, okay, we need to think strategically about how we develop your fan base, and we need to put these things in place so that we can position you this way and brand you this way. And when I hear you talk about your fans, it's like you said, it's the best part of your job. It's coming from the heart. That must make it a lot easier than if you had to follow a strategic kind of script for how you do it.
Definitely,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I agree. I think just being able to like have fun with it makes it so easy, and being able to be yourself. I mean, there are some artists who like sort of take it out of themselves and put on a persona, which is a whole different thing. But for me, with the type of music that I write, I can't imagine doing that for myself. It's just, my music is very personal, as if it's sort of like a diary, and so I think the most important part for me is just being myself.
Well, it's a lot easier than being someone else,
Yeah,
right?
it was not.
And so I want to, on that topic, are there other artists that you saw use those kinds of strategies that you modelled your own approach on?
Yeah, definitely. I think, who was a big one? I reckon a massive one that I looked up to was Olivia Rodrigo, because she was sort of coming up in the same time that I was starting to write my own songs and things like that. So I would always watch with the way that she would interact with fans. She would feel so like just such a normal person through her social media accounts and everything. It would feel like someone you knew, and I think that's what I really liked about her and why everyone gravitated to her so much. Who else have I think a big one would also be, it's a funny one because a lot of people tend to give a lot of hate, but a really funny one is actually Benson Boone. He would just like, I remember watching him and he would just put himself out there all the time. He would post like almost like every day, multiple times a day, had no shame. When he'd get hate, he wouldn't care. It didn't matter, and whether you hate him or love him, like he's literally just gone straight to the top and like built his career just by consistently just like believing in himself and putting himself out there. So I would always look at anything that he would post and release and follow that. I think those are like my favorite people to look for inspiration is just anyone who just like is consistent and seems like themselves, almost to the point where you feel like you almost know them. I think that's a good sign, even though it sounds a bit parasocial, but if you feel like you know them, then they're probably doing a good job of just being themselves and putting themselves out there.
And you mentioned the hate that artists like Benson Boone get. Have you experienced any of that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, social media, I feel like it's just an inevitability. It comes with it, and there's always people who say weird things. Definitely, obviously, nowhere near as much as I am such a small artist. But yeah, I've definitely gotten weird comments and messages and things before. And I am like definitely, I think so, like a lot of people say you have to be really, really thick-skinned, and honestly I'm not. I'm definitely not a thick-skinned person, so like it definitely can get to me, and I sort of just have to like shut it out, not look at them at all. But yeah, I think I've definitely found ways to just make sure I protect myself from that and not look at those sorts of comments and things.
So as well as being a songwriter, musician, performer, you're also a self-taught producer. Had some help from your dad building a studio at home, and your dad is a producer but for television, so very different to producing music. As an emerging artist, how do you go about that constant upskilling, learning new things, making sure that you're staying relevant in the skills space?
Yeah, I think production is such an important skill for like independent artists if they want to take the time to learn it, because I mean, one, the obvious thing is it's such a money saver. It helped me get to where I am by saving all that money on producing the songs. I was able to put those money into making really good music videos or visuals and releasing the songs, which is arguably just as important as making the songs in the first place to ensure that they get heard. So it's a massive help with that. But also I just think there's a really, I feel really attached to the music I make when I am literally producing every second of the song. It feels like something I really made and crafted myself, and I feel like I have a much deeper attachment for it than songs that I have made with other people that I haven't produced. So I think it's just a really awesome skill, and I mean, I just literally taught myself through watching YouTube tutorials over and over and over again, and listening to songs that I liked, trying to recreate them. Just like my first songs were literally terrible. Like they will be terrible when you start producing, and then they will just slowly and slowly get better the more and more that you make. And yeah, I think it's a really good skill for anyone to have if they want to try and get into that.
What will happen as your career continues to unfold? Do you think you'll continue to produce your own music, or will you work with other producers? What do you see happening there?
I think I'll always continue to at least produce an aspect of every song that I make. At the moment, it has definitely gotten, just because I have a lot more going on, it's been a lot harder to have the time to produce every single song myself, so I've been outsourcing and working with like members in my band and things like that to help with co-prod, but I always have some sort of a part in all of the production of my songs, and I think I always will, even if it gets smaller over time, and there's some songs that I only have a little part in, some songs that I produce fully. I think I will always have to. I'm just too much of a control freak now. I have to have at least some part of every single song.
Can I please ask a question?
Yes.
Hey, how did you start your band?
I started my band through, my guitarist was actually just a family friend that I knew, and I think that's a big thing, is just sort of thinking of people that you already know who are in the music scene and make music. He was pretty much the only person that I knew who was in music. He went to the conservatorium, and so I just reached out to him. I was like, hey, do you know anyone who could be in my band? And then he knew my drummer, and the drummer knew the bass player, and so it just sort of happened from that. So, and then those are the only people who've ever played for me, and I still play with them now. So I think it was just like trying to find that one sort of connection that you have. If there's anyone you know that's in music and would love to play that sort of stuff, those people sort of tend to know more musicians and just sort of meet people in that way.
I am going to open it up for some questions in a moment, and then Lyric and I will continue this conversation. But we've kind of made it sound like every day is a glory day, right? Oh, I'm on the main stage at Spilt Milk, and oh, today I'm being flown to Perth, and oh, I've got another 1 million streams on my Spotify. But that's not the reality, right? What does the average week look like when you're not on tour, you're not performing, you're not recording?
Oh, it's literally just being in like my pajamas every day the whole week in the studio just making songs. It's definitely not anywhere near as glamorous. Even like this whole this festival I did over the weekend was the first show that I've done of the year, so the whole year I sort of just spent at home writing, not doing much, not making anywhere near as much money, just sort of sitting and really trying to focus on the songs that are coming next. And yeah, it definitely goes from like, musicians will have peaks of just doing like a massive amount. For me, it always usually happens towards the end of the years, is when a lot of tours come to Australia and a lot of things like that. So there's just a lot happening in like that September to December period, and then sort of completely slows down from like the January to like May. Just not as many tours happening here. Everyone sort of just like, every muso just sort of chills out a bit. So, you know, it ebbs and flows, and that's just how it is.
I'll come to your question in just a second. But just on that, as well as the in the studio in your pajamas, that actually sounds like a dream to me. Even though I have no musical talent, so I can play the ukulele. What about the rest? Because there's, and I think this is what sometimes, and the whole purpose of coming to something like this is that artists begin to realise that if you want to treat your creative pursuit like a business, there's invoicing and insurance and contracts and planning for social media and recording the content and responding to emails, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, like, making the music is funnily only such like a small fraction of the job. When you're sort of an independent artist, you have to put on a lot of different hats, and so I think it's just a matter of just sort of teaching yourself on the way. I never knew how to say, I didn't know what an invoice was. When I made my first invoice, I had to ask someone what an invoice was and how to write it up, things like that. Just sort of, Google is your best friend, just learning along the way how to do admin. I was lucky in the fact that just like I was already so used to working with social media and things like that, so making videos and posting things on there didn't really feel like as much as a trouble for me, but it can be for some people, so you sort of just have to tough that out, find people that you, like I said, was inspired by, look at what they're posting, make it your own. And yeah, there's a lot of other things that come to music, but you sort of just gotta come to love all sides of it, which I think I have. Even there are days where like I'll be like, I don't want to write today. I do just want to actually sit down and do a full day of admin, and that's actually just a nice break sometimes from writing the music, just to reset your mind. I'm just gonna send a bunch of emails off to people or get something done that I needed to. So yeah, there's a lot of different sides to it.
And I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and I know for a fact that they use writing songs or mucking around in the studio as the number one way to procrastinate from all the other things that need to be done. And it's like, oh, I can't do that because I'm really busy in the studio. It's like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just finishing this song that I've been working on for 3.5 years. It's like, okay, I hear you. You had a question?
I was just going to ask, because I looked at your website and I saw that you have like either a manager or agent. When in your career did you get an agent or manager?
Yeah, I think a really important part for me was waiting for the right moment for that to happen. I got my agent, well, I guess when I started out, I really was like trying so bad to get a manager, an agent, a label, anyone, and I was sending all these like cold emails and trying everything, and I just like, I wasn't at the point yet to have a manager, and so obviously like no one was taking me on or anything like that, and so and so it obviously just, it wasn't the right time for me at that moment, and so I sort of realized that just like you need to figure out how to do it on your own, and I just stopped really caring about that, and I did, and so I just sort of started building it up on my own, which you can do. You don't need anyone else to lay the foundation, you just need yourself. And it wasn't until I kept building it and it had started to grow, and I had put on my own headline tour around Australia and booked the rooms myself, and I sold those rooms out, and that was when people sort of started to take notice, and that was when I ended up connecting with my agent, who I'd sort of actually met at an event like this a few years earlier. I met my agent at like an agency sort of panel out in Ipswich one day that was just for emerging artists to learn about booking agents, and later on in my career, a couple of years later, when like things started to take off, we started working together, and then he introduced me to who became my manager, and he sort of started coming to my shows and was really interested in things like that. And I think waiting till that moment sort of allowed me to, I guess, keep the power and sort of pick who I really wanted to be on my team, and pick the right people, and not just sort of pick the first, I don't know, people who replied to my emails back when I was really trying to get people to work with me. So yeah, I think you always know when the time is right for the team to come on board, because you can really get a long way by yourself, and honestly the longer you get and further you get by yourself just means the more power that you have when it comes time to add people to your team. So I think yeah, the more you can do yourself is the better.
Sometimes you also have a better appreciation of how much time those jobs take, and so paying, you know, a percentage of the income from a tour becomes worth it, because you actually have that trauma from booking every venue, booking the travel, sorting your band members' schedules, and you're like, you know what, this is actually something I would like to outsource. And I can say from a different point of view, because I run my own business outside of music, you very quickly work out what you enjoy doing and what you're good at, and what you want to pay someone else to just take care of, so you never have to think about it again. And the music business is no different. So if you know that no matter what happens, you will always have social media at the bottom of your to-do list, then that might be something you choose to outsource instead of a booking agent or a manager, because you actually like doing all of the logistics of booking a tour or whatever. Yeah. So other questions for Lyric? Yes, Brad?
Lyric, can you, just for those in the room who, I think there's a bit of a distorted view of what a manager actually does, it's like basically people don't know. Can you explain to them what firstly an agent is, but then what a manager does and their roles for how they help you?
Yeah,
Great
100%.
question.
So my agent, who I met first actually, and had on my team first, which I think was the right decision at that point, because an agent actually you aren't usually contractually obliged to. You just work with them, and if you ever need to leave them for any reason, I could leave my agent at any point in time and not under a contract as you are with a manager. So that was the first person I worked with, and he books all of my shows, all of my headline shows. He looks after all of my touring. He was the one who got me onto things like Spilt Milk and the festival I played over the weekend, and his job is to just completely look after all live shows. He doesn't really handle anything other than that. He just handles live shows. He handles the invoices for those live shows. He handles paying the support artists. He handles talking back and forth with the venue about what we need for our shows and things like that. So his whole sector is in live. And then my manager is sort of works as a bridge between me and my agent. So whatever I need, he talks to my agent, and we all have meetings, the three of us, but it's a lot of them working together. And my manager, pretty much just any sort of work that I don't want to do because I want to be able to focus on the music more, I'm able to give to him. If there's grant applications, which are often really long. I will often ask my my manager, to help me with those ones, write those ones. He looks after all of my invoices and my admin. He's constantly searching for things like PR opportunities that I can have, brand deals that I can have. He's the one who booked me into like a version with Triple J, so he sort of like landed those sorts of opportunities. Or PR, he looks after radio, he looks after my releases when I release them through GyroStream and they go to Spotify. He's the one doing all of those playlist pitching and things like that. So he's sort of handling pretty much everything else that isn't to do with the live scene, because that's what my agent looks after. He looks after all of the other stuff and all of the stuff that I don't really want to do. And if there's something that I am good at, like Sam was saying, like I love social media, so I don't really get him to do any of that stuff. Whereas someone who really doesn't like social media, maybe will get their manager to help them out with their social media, things like that. I love booking travel and all of my flights and things for all of my shows, so I look after that. I don't really put that onto my agent. I don't like applying for things and filling out big grant applications. I give that to him. So it's sort of just a pick and choose of what I want to do, and he just is really there to help me with whatever I'm just not good at, whatever. He's much better at finding opportunities like that I couldn't. I never would have been able to land that Triple J like version on my own. That is very much him and through his connections and things like that. So yeah, it's all about just meeting the right manager who works with you and can fill those gaps that you don't, which he really did for me. He filled those gaps that I did not know how to do, which was meeting those people and getting me those sorts of opportunities.
That was a great question, Brad, and I was just going to add to what Lyric said, and something to keep in the back of your mind today. If anyone hearing Lyric has just said, oh, that's what I need a manager, I need an agent, and I'll be winning, and I'll get to do Triple J like a version and play Spilt Milk, that's not how it works. And you even said you sent heaps of emails off, hey, will you be my manager? Will you be my manager? And inevitably the answer's going to be no. You have to be ready. You have to be at a certain point in your career trajectory to need a manager. Now you can always find a manager that will work with you as an emerging artist, but it's a very different kind of relationship to the relationship Lyric would have with her manager. Did you have anything to add on that topic, Brad, around management?
Yeah, I suppose another thing that Lyric's talking about is she's taking jobs off her manager as well. And when you're doing that, that's also a negotiating point that you can have with your manager on rates that you pay or percentages that they take as well, depending on how much skill you have in an area. I know artists do that with some of their managers that are really good at admin and stuff like that, so they take jobs off them and then they pay them less, essentially, which can be really nice as an independent artist.
Yeah.
One big thing to really note that Lyric said as well is she booked a sold-out national tour before anybody
Paid attention to her. Yeah.
So there's a lot of first self-managerial stuff that Lyric's also doing, but also having the data available to know where to even book a tour. So it's not Field of Dreams, just book it and then people will come. It's going to places where she already knows that there is a market and a thirst for her music and things like that. But very much like anything in the music industry, people are only ever going to jump on board your train when it's already moving. It's not at the start when all the energy and development is needed, just like a steam train, right? They're going to jump on when it's moving its fastest because it's the least amount of work, least amount of friction for them. So that's the big challenge and that Lyric has done an amazing job at.
Yeah. So just on that, and following up on Brad's comment, when it comes to touring, and that first headlining sold-out show that you did, which was remarkable, I have to say, knowing and following your journey since the very beginning, and then seeing the social media from that tour, I swear I had tears in my eyes just thinking about it. It's such a passionate, active fan base at every show. How did you go about choosing those locations? Did you go through a process of looking at your streaming data, and you did?
Yeah, definitely. I think at that point in time, Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne were my top cities by far, and so those were just the immediate three that I picked. They're also just the easiest to do in Australia. I think getting to Adelaide and especially Perth is much more difficult and expensive, so I definitely did not add those ones on until my second tour round. But I think Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne was just a great is just a great little run to do for the first one when you are at that level. It's I think anyone who's sort of coming up in Australia, those are definitely the first cities to look at hitting. And yeah, it was really difficult because I really was looking for all ages venues, which are very difficult in this country and anywhere, but especially in this country with our liquor laws. And so I was doing a lot of asking around. At Big Sound that year, I remember just like having meetings and asking everyone like, do you know any all ages venues in Melbourne? Do you know any all ages venues in Sydney? And just looking and searching. And then I finally, like, you might think they're not there, but they are. And so I finally found them. And yeah, I reached out to all of the venues on my own and booked them in myself, which was a big task, and it's a big thing to learn and to do for the first time. It's a bit daunting because you know these people are often dealing with like booking agents, and I was just this like 20-year-old girl being like, hey, can I have your venue, please? But if you have the proof and you send over like an EPK and things to prove that you're going to put the people in that room, that's all they care about, and that's all they want is to have a show with some people there. And so yeah, they were all actually great. Most like they got back to me really quick, which sometimes isn't the case. Sometimes venues can take weeks, but I was lucky in this case that they all got back to me and I was able to book in that tour myself. It can seem really daunting, but yeah, it is totally possible to be able to book rooms, especially in Australia, on your own without an agent. You can always just like go on the venue's websites, find the email of who's booking it, and hit them up.
Another question?
And EPK, do you mean electronic press kit? And when did you make one of those? Did you have one of those from the start?
That was one of the first things I did. I think I have one of those before coming to the first BANDCAMP, and then we sort of like, they would talk about what sort of things you needed to add into those. It was sort of, back at that point, it would have just had the festivals and shows that I'd played at that point, which weren't crazy. I hadn't done any, I think I'd done one headline show at that point, so there really wasn't much to put in there, but just anything you can, pop it in there. I had just some press photos, a bio about what I'd done, links to all my music and my socials, and like downloadable stuff for them to use. But yeah, I think the most important thing is just the bio and any footage that you have of yourself playing live in some sense, whether it's a high quality video, whether it's just an iPhone video, just anything that shows how you sound live, so that they can, I think a lot of bookers and a lot of artists' issue is that they'll go to the venues and try and play there, and the venue doesn't have any idea of what they sound like live, and so they're not going to put on anyone who they literally don't know whether you sound good or not. They want to hear a video of you singing live in a show, just as the audience would. So just have a video like that in there as well. It's a big help.
We'll be looking at EPKs.
Awesome. And I was going to say, one of the things that is quite consistent across the music industry, you know, and we're going to talk about this in the panel at the end of the day, that concept around who you know, is that people are looking for you to be organised and responsive and consistent. And so if a venue asks for an EPK and you don't have one, that's a problem. And it's very easy to create one and have it there just in case. And in some regards, as you're starting out, it doesn't even matter what's in there. It's the fact that you have gone through the process of creating one and can respond to people when they ask for it. You're not going to get media interviews if a journalist or a radio announcer can't introduce you. Otherwise, they're literally saying, hey, here's a 20-year-old girl from Mount Tambourine. Let's take a listen. And you have to be able to, you know, the story that sits behind artists sometimes is just as important to listeners as the music that they are creating. Because when you think about art, there are heaps of people who write amazing songs. And so the fact that you've written an amazing song doesn't necessarily set you apart from the next person who's written an amazing song. You really have to have a story to tell, and that is what venues and publicists and journalists and radio announcers are looking for, to a story to tell about you. So other questions for Lyric? Hey.
At the start, how did you handle the fear of people coming to your own shows?
Ooh, as in like people I knew, or
Like if people were even going to come?
oh, as in yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that was massively scary. Putting on my first ever show, I did my first little ever headline show at the Hotter Basement, which is like a little 150 cap room, I think. And I was so scared to put that on the first place, even though the Gold Coast is like where I'm from, and I knew that I could get some family and friends there. I was like, that's still a lot of people, and it is definitely frightening. And you sort of just have to just just make the leap and just do it. I reached out, I booked the venue in, and I just was posting about it ridiculously wherever I could. And you can sort of you can almost make anything happen with the support of friends, especially when like it's a city that you live in, and with the help of social media. I think that was a big one for that show. Was right at the end I did a video which then got a bit of traction and sold the last few tickets for that show. But yeah, I was definitely scared when I booked it. I didn't know. I feel like I am still a bit scared with every room that I book, because every show sort of gets a bit bigger, and I always get scared whether that's going to be too big or what it is. But at the end of the day, you just sort of have to focus on. I've played shows that aren't sold out before, and they're still some of my favorite shows. Like even if it's half the room full, but they're all people who just like are absolutely like obsessed and singing every word. It really doesn't matter. That's better than a full room of people who are just sort of like standing there looking. Definitely like so much better. And so yeah, I think it will be scary, and you just sort of gotta like face that anyway.
Do it anyway.
Yeah.
Shitting yourself, but doing
Yeah.
it. So just back to that first national headlining tour, how big were those rooms that you were playing?
They were 300 in each city. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big jump from like that hotter show, 150 to 300. Favourite festival set so far?
Ooh, it would definitely have to be Spill Milk. Spill Milk was just a crazy experience being at like on a stage that big, and it was just so surreal being like it was weird being at this festival over the weekend because it's a lot smaller. I'm used to like having a security guard and like in Spill Milk I really had to prove that I had to be there. I was like, no, I'm definitely like I'm an artist, like this is my parking spot, like please let us in. And then this one we just like walked up and we're like, hey, and they're like, in you go. I was like, cool. So Spill Milk was just very surreal in the sense that like it felt really full on, and just being backstage with some of those other artists and getting to see these like artists that you look up to, and like getting nervous to go up and meet them. I was so nervous to try and speak to Sombo the whole time, and on the final show I finally said hello to him, and it was so scary, but I finally did it. So
did the conversation progress from hey and
not really. I sort of just like, hey, your set was really, really good, and he was like, thanks, and I was like, okay. And that was it, and I was just so proud that I even did that, because I was like, it is so scary, like meeting all these people that you admire and look up to backstage, but it also is cool because backstage at these festivals, everyone is just like your peer, and it sort of goes very quickly from like them seeming so massive and big to just like, oh, there he is, his green room's like next to mine, and just like walks past to get food with me. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Because at the end of the day, you're still a shy girl from Mount Tambourine, right? So saying hi to Sambo is a big deal. What's the best piece of advice you've ever got from your time in music so far?
I think the best piece of advice, I think it was at a big sound, someone gave it to me, was that no one will ever care as much about your music as you do. So you can add as many people to your team as you want, and they can really care, and they can put in so much work for you, but at the end of the day there is just no one who is going to care as much about your project and your music. It's just not possible as you will. It is like intrinsically your thing, and other people can help you, they can really care about it, but at the end of the day, like, you're going to be the one who takes you to the next step, and you need to be the most driven person on your team by far. You are like the CEO of that project, and yeah, I think that's just what they told me. It's just like, at the end of the day, no matter who you add, you always will be caring the most about it, and you're the person who's going to take your career to the next level, which is totally true. I think I found is that like everyone else can really care, but at the end of the day, like, you are going to care the most, and you will be the one who will make things happen for you in the end.
If anyone else has got, yes, Katie.
Just on your first tour, when you were booking those rooms, did you take your own soundbite?
Yes.
Or girl, sorry.
Yes, I did for those ones.
And
Yes.
and did you take your own gear as well, or were you booking? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So in those shows, we hire backline for every show. If the venue doesn't have a kit, we hire a kit in, because we don't fly with a kit. That's too big. But pretty much everything else we bring ourselves. I think the kit is the only thing we hire. We bring all of our instruments. We bring our own in-ear monitoring rack, which is like pretty large. We brought our own sound desk for that one, also pretty large. We fly with all those with APRA through Virgin. You can all every person can get 4 free bags essentially, which is, I've never had to pay for extra luggage or anything in Australia when I'm touring. And we tour with, I think on the last tour we toured with 22 bags, and so we got all of those for free. And yeah, I think you can hire anything in any city. It's it's a bit expensive, but you know, it is what it is. It's expensive gear. If you need to hire, you can. But no, we didn't. We took most of it with us, and yeah, I toured with a sound person, which is a great, a massive help. It was an easy thing for me because it's my bass player's brother is a sound person, so it was just really easy to already have him on board. It's probably not something I would have had on that first tour if it wasn't for that connection, because it is sort of a big step up. It's definitely not something you need at the start. I probably didn't necessarily need it at that point, but it was just already someone I knew and was friends with. But yeah, so once you are ready for that point, it's a massive help. I mean, having a sound person is having. Sometimes I like when I went overseas and did my UK tour, I didn't have a soundie, and so like it can be a very difficult thing, you know, working with someone you've just met to try and figure out how everything works and how you sound, and patching the whole stage can become quite stressful. Yeah, so it just sort of cuts all of that out, which is really, really nice. Whenever I'm touring in Australia, I definitely try to have him there. But you know, sometimes you can't, and you live with that too. It's also not the end of the world either. Yeah.
Back to that tour and the realities of finances. Did you make any money?
Yeah, I made a lot of money on that tour. Probably actually, I think I made more money on that tour than I have on my previous tour, just because I was completely independent at that point. I wasn't giving any of my money to anyone else. I took all profits, and a big thing actually was that I ran all of the merch myself. So my mom and I just do all the merch, and she came to every show and sold all the merch. By doing that, none of the venues took any percentage of that merch, and literally I think I made more on the merch than on the ticket sales. And so that was it. I still try and do that everywhere I can. Just try and always like bring along a seller. My mom, I'm just lucky that she loves doing that. But if you have someone, a friend who can help, or someone in that city who can be selling your merch, that's a massive way to be able to help with funds and keep that money, because venues can take such a massive cut. Sometimes they can take like, I think when I was in Dublin, the venue just sort of out of nowhere told us that like we couldn't sell our own merch, they had to do it, and then they would be taking a 25% cut, which makes a massive difference. So it's always just like, check with the venue first that you're going to be keeping all of that money, and bring someone along to be selling it. But yeah, there's definitely ways to be making money off of tours, especially when you're independent. It's actually probably the best time to be making a good profit off of headline shows.
Just on the topic of merch and back to superfans, which we were discussing at the beginning of this chat, and I think something that people sometimes forget about superfans is that, and this is the realities of the economics of it, when you look at especially some of the young people that have been following your career since when they were underage, and the fact that every year they might buy a concert ticket and a record and 1 or 2 pieces of merch, which could add up to $200 a year, and you run that forward over the 20 or 30 years that they support your career, and that becomes a fan that is contributing thousands and thousands of dollars to the sustainability of your enterprise. Do you ever think about it that way? Because you seem to think about it in such an organic, I love my fans, they're beautiful, but they are also making your music project viable.
Yeah, 100%. I always think about that, especially when because yeah, I look after pretty much all of the. I'm very across all of the like finances in my project, and I can see exactly. I have like a little app that I use, and I can see exactly where all the money comes from, and absolutely like by vast majority of the money is from merch sales, either at a show or on my online store, and yeah, that is literally just all fans wanting to own something. And I think it's just so cool whenever I see the fans in merch. I always just make sure to thank them. That is like an artist's like #1 source of income in this day and age is 100% merch. And so yeah, I think that's just like a massive thing for me, is always making sure to thank anyone who buys any bit of merch, whether it's the most expensive item, whether it's the smallest item. It makes such a difference. Yeah.
I know Sunny's last gig, which was like an album listening party thing that I went to, she had some sunshiny earrings or daisies or something. What kind of merch do you have other than t-shirts?
Yeah. I get really into the merch because yeah, like I said, me and my mom, it's just my favorite thing. She gets very into it. So we've made our smallest item is we have like little badges that people can just put wherever they want. Like put them on usually on their backpacks or on their clothes. We have like a little badge set that we sell. What else do we have in my shows? Then we have the CDs, the vinyls. We make my own tote bags, which is a really good saver of money. Tote bags can kind of be really expensive for no reason to buy. So we actually just go to Spotlight, buy like the little $2 tote bags that they sell at every Spotlight, and then we just print them on ourselves. And so that's like it makes every tote bag cost like $2 as opposed to costing like $15 when you can order them online through a merch printing website. So I think wherever you can DIY merch is a massive help. The girl Holly Hebe, who opened for me on my last tour, she did really well with merch on these little hair clips that she just handmade. They were just little hair clips that she added little charms to, and she sold a ridiculous amount of those hair clips on my tour. Everyone bought them because they were just so small and cute, and everyone knew that she made them. So yeah, I think getting like unique and DIY with merch is a massive thing, and it also just feels so much more personal when I can tell fans like, yeah, like my mum and I made these bags and these badges, like here you go. So yeah, it's really cool.
And again, even though it's quite genuine, this approach, does also feed into the brand identity that you're building, right?
Yeah.
And same with what Sunny's going to talk about is you make these decisions because they're the right decisions and you genuinely care about your fans, but also it fits with you as the artist and the artist persona that you're portraying. Other questions? Yes, Brad?
One of the best things that you are kind of clearly better than most on the internet is really building community. Were there any particular strategies that you had early on where some of these guys might be in parts of their career that you found got the most traction? So I remember like I'm your new favourite artist, if you like Grace, if you like Taylor, like were there any particular posting styles that you did that got the best engagement?
Yeah, definitely. I think I mean the first step is just being really consistent, because even like the best posting ideas, sometimes they're not going to do well, so just posting as much as you can just gives you the most chances. But some of the best ones that worked for me were definitely like find some artists who you were similar to. It's like some people tend to be weird about that and think that they're like drawing too much comparison, but at the end of the day, like the easiest way to find people who like your music is figure out what music they might already like. So for me, it's if you like Taylor Swift, and if you like Grace Abrams, and if you like Olivia Rodrigo, and even just using those words in your videos gets it out to the right people, rather than it feeding your video out to, I don't know, a bunch of guys who like indie surf rock music. Like they're not gonna want my music on their For You page. So definitely like find some artists who are similar to you, incorporate them in your videos in some way. Don't be too scared to do that. No one cares. They don't care. They would have done it at the start of their careers as well if they needed to. So do that. I think a great thing is also just like talking to the camera. I think I used to do a lot of videos where I would, and I still do, I use them all the time, where I would just like have my little microphone and talk to the camera about myself and give people like I said, artists that they might like, that will make them like my music, things about my shows, talk about myself, give little facts about myself, and just like any way to like make yourself personable. I think that's a lot of things, something a lot of artists miss is you can go through their whole like Instagram or TikTok feed and not find a single video of like them speaking and how their voice sounds, and well, how can you really like feel like you know them and care about them if you've never even really heard them talk, you've only heard them like lip sync to their songs. So I think that's a really big one, is just being yourself. Anything, you can turn anything from your like daily life into content pretty much. The more just like less that you sort of cared about putting it together is probably the better. I think sometimes the first ever thing that sort of blew up for me on TikTok was something I literally didn't care about. It was a little photo slideshow that I put together in like 3 minutes because I was like, oh, I haven't posted today, I just want to post something, and then that was like my first video that got over 100,000 views or something like that. So just like never get too caught up in thinking it needs to be super professional. Honestly, the less professional and the more personable it is, the better. So I think those are sort of the video formats that I would follow the most.
Other question for, yes?
How regularly do you post?
I think at the moment, I'm not posting as much at the moment because I am in like sort of a writing period right now, but I think back when I was also really starting out, and when you are really like trying to get your social media off the ground, it is like a lot harder work, and so you do have to be posting more and posting more consistently. I would try and post about once a day. I know there are people who post more than that. I couldn't really be bothered to do that. I think once a day is fine. I think less than once a day is also fine, as long as you're posting just like every few days, keeping people up to date with what you're doing. Just really like, it can genuinely be like the simplest thing. And I know some people hate posting on social media, but my thing is always just like, if you love music enough, that will overcome your hate for posting on social media. So really just like, once you find a way to have fun with it, it will no longer become hard to post every couple of days or post every day. I think I really sort of hit a point where it all changed for me when I was just like, I used to just like really hate posting on social media for maybe the first year or so, and then I sort of just decided like, no, I'm not gonna care so much about what I post anymore. I'm just gonna almost post and treat it as if like, I used to have a lot of fun running fan pages when I was a kid and doing that, so I sort of just was like, I'm just going to treat it like it's that and just like actually have fun with social media again, and like as soon as I did that is when it started doing well. So yeah, I think once you have fun with it, posting more consistently will also become easier. But yeah, just as much as you can, really.
How did you sort of fund yourself, like when you started out? Did you have to use a lot of credit to buy equipment and stuff like that? And then when did you sort of know, like, this is a full-time job, I can not work at McDonald's anymore or
Yeah,
something like
definitely. I mean, for the first 2-3 years of me sort of doing music, I was busking and playing at restaurants every single week and weekend, and so making money from that, which I would then put back into my music. And so yeah, I worked a job all of high school, and then I quit at the end of high school and just started busking and playing like gigs full time, because it's a great way to make money and also still be doing music, getting practice, playing live. I was super nervous to ever busk the first time. I was like shaking, I couldn't even do it. And so like that like year of busking before I even played my first proper show on a stage with like a microphone and everything it made that so much easier. So I was making money while also like upskilling and getting better at my craft, so that really helped. And then yeah, it was just sort of finding ways to really ultra budget at the start. Like pretty much everything I would do, I would create all of my own music videos. I obviously produced myself. I did all of my own photos. I would bring in a photographer, and that was sort of the only cost that I would have, was I would pay that photographer and I would do everything else myself. And so honestly, at the start, the costs were very little. Like the costs were just not really that much when I was doing all of it myself and pretty much getting out there through social media. I wasn't paying, actually I think I did once I paid like a couple $1,000s for a PR thing, which was a big regret of mine, honestly. But you know, it was a learning curve, is that like when you're at that point starting out, you don't need to be throwing massive amounts of money at those sorts of things. You actually can just build it on your own, and that money that I threw at that PR thing didn't get me anywhere, and the building it on my own did. So I think since then I've pretty much not really spent any more money on PR. I think the best PR is just yourself and social media and the gigs that you play. And so yeah, the costs obviously came up as I grew and grew as an artist, but then the money by that point was coming in. So I think the biggest thing was just finding ways to really do it for as little cost as possible at the start. There are a lot of ways and things you can DIY and corners that you can cut. And then by the time that you are making money off of like that first tour was probably the first time that I really made money off of my music, and then just saving all of that and putting it straight back into the project, essentially to fund the next music videos and fund the next release and fund the next tour and get myself overseas and things like that.
I think there's a good lesson there in being strategic as well, which coming to events like this really helps with. Possibly the most useful thing about coming to events like this, because knowing what not to do sometimes is as important as knowing what to do. And like LYRIC's experience around paying a publicist a few $1,000s to do some media, when sometimes even if you get the media, it's not going to get you what you want, is a really good lesson. Also being really specific about who your fans are, so who they actually are now, and who you know, the fan base that you want to have in the future, means you can really hone everything and save a lot of time and resources, you know, because you know who you're talking to, you know what language they speak, they know how you have to look and present to reach them. And that is, even though for some of you that might come intuitively, for others that's something you need to sit and think strategically about and have a plan. And when we talk about having a plan, that could just be dot points on a page or ideas in your head, but you have a plan, right? So speaking about plan, you're only 22. It seems like it's been a whirlwind of 4 years for us watching, so amazing. What is on the horizon for you? Like, where would you like to head?
Yeah. Well, I think at the moment I'm just, like I said, sort of in that writing period and trying to figure out what the next era looks like and just release more music is my goal at the moment. For the next year will just be sort of a big release year. I had a very big touring end of last year, so I think those sort of things ebb and flow. You sort of have a big touring moment where you're focusing on live shows, and then you go back and you actually have time to be in the studio and write the music again. So that's sort of where I'm at. And then just, planning for what's to come. I think at the moment for me is really trying to get onto support tours. For the past year and a half, essentially, I've only really played headline shows. So I think just like getting my agent onto trying to reach out to any support shows, any festivals like that one that I played over the weekend, just pretty much anything other than headline shows is what I'm looking at right now. And then a lot more of just overseas is where I'm looking. We're looking at Europe for the end of the year. I've just bought my US visas, which are very expensive but very worth it to get over there. Hopefully early next year. And so yeah, I think overseas is a big one for me with my audiences, because for me as an artist, I'm not really just like primarily, my fan base isn't all in Australia. They're actually quite equal everywhere. Like I sort of played the same size headline show in London that I did in Brisbane, and so my goal is to just try and get to as many of those different places as possible and keep building that up. So that's the big goal for me, is like getting overseas again.
So we're getting ready to wrap this conversation up. Lyric's going to be around for morning tea, and I'm sure she won't mind you continuing the conversation. Are there any final questions? Yes, we'll go with you, and then we'll go to Brad.
Not so much a question, but 2 years ago I got to go to my first Gold Coast Music Awards, and you won maybe breakout artist or something, and we had a real brief chat. We're talking. I always question I'll probably ask a lot of people today: what did you produce on your Logic? I was trying to say your Logic on the iPad, how awesome that is. And I thought actually I should follow you on the socials, so I did. And I just want to say, like, to watch your journey, like we've been talking about there, to see that, and then your headliner show, like touring and all that, and just what you've done in that period of time, that I've just, as a Gold Coast artist that I follow, you've obviously been doing a lot of great work, and I just want to say well done, congratulations.
Yeah. And you would probably feel the same way I and other people do watching social media. You feel like you've been taken on that journey, right? Even though you're just a faceless person on social media, because of the style of communication, really feels so personable and connects with people. So it's wonderful. Couldn't happen to a nicer person, really. Brad?
Mine was just going to be, what is your social handle so everyone here can follow you and learn something from you?
Yeah, my socials are all music.by.lyric, and then just lyric on Spotify, and my website's the same, musicbylyric.com. Yeah, please follow me, guys.
So I'm not sure if you remember this, but at the first BANDCAMP, we're not doing this today by the way, but at the first and second BANDCAMP, at the end of the day, everyone wrote a letter to themselves, and then a month later, I diligently walked down to the letterbox, muttering stupid fucking letters, and posted all the letters back to the artist after I put stamps on every one of them. Do you remember what that letter said?
Yeah, I think from the first year, I think I remember that letter. I think it was actually advice that Brad had given about, I really wanted to find like a mentor and people. This was when I really didn't like know anyone, and so I wrote on that letter like, try and find a mentor and people to give me feedback on my music, because obviously I wasn't at the point to have a team around me yet. So I was just like, I think Big Sound was coming up in a few months' time, and I was like, I really wanted to like make it my goal to go to Big Sound and try and just like meet with people to get feedback on my project and find a mentor who can not be working, not like be in a contract or anything or giving them money, but just help me and just have some feedback from someone who just knows a bit more about and has been in the industry longer than me. So I think, yeah, I just wrote down that piece of advice to remember it.
Yeah. And then you have had several mentors.
I found lots of people.
So we're going to wrap up the conversation there, but a good reminder that as you go into these next 3 sessions, and remember we're recommending you do the business of music, the marketing 101, and then either the release strategy or touring. But as you go into those sessions, it's really useful to have in the back of your mind one thing that you would like to get out of today. And then this afternoon we'll talk again about what your goals are or actions that you can take after this, because you've given up a whole day, many of you have paid to be here, and just walking out with a really concrete idea of even one thing you can do to honour yourself and the time you've given and take an action is going to be really useful. Now, we can't all end up like Lyric, playing Spilt Milk and Triple J like a version and going to London, but we can certainly take steps to get there. So Lyric, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I just love that 4 years ago you were here and now you're here, and I can't wait to see what happens next.